Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. This isn't some regal fantasy soaked in rosewater and silk. No, tonight we step beyond the polished marble halls and velvet curtains of medieval castles and discover what really went on behind those towering stone walls. What you're about to hear may change how you think about queens and princesses forever, because the truth is, while they wore crowns of gold and gowns of brocade, their hygiene habits were, let's say, less than majestic. Before we get started, take a moment to gently like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy drifting off to the smell of history's grimmier side. And drop a comment below telling me what time it is where you're tuning in from. I always love seeing the little constellation of sleepy viewers from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey: how disgusting hygiene habits of medieval royal women. Let's not sugarcoat this. Being a royal woman in the Middle Ages wasn't all pearls and poetry. Sure, they had silk gowns, lavish feasts, and the occasional bard composing tragic love songs in their honor, but they also had fleas and lice and a chamber pot in the corner of their chamber that hadn't been emptied since last feast day. They bathed infrequently, sometimes once a month, sometimes once a season. Perfume wasn't just decorative, it was survival. And the medical advice? Wild. Doctors told noble women to avoid washing too much, lest it weaken the womb. Yes, really. And then there were the teeth, or what remained of them. This isn't about mocking the past. It's about peeling back the embroidered curtain to see what life was really like for the crowned and corseted. Because if you think being born into royalty meant cleanliness and comfort, think again. Tonight, we travel into the private lives of queens, duchesses, and noble ladies, their baths, their bedchambers, their bodily anxieties, the cold stone floors, the pungent herbal remedies, the plague-fueled paranoia, the bizarre beliefs about menstruation, breath, body odor, and the female body in general. All of it shaped their daily routines in ways that are fascinating, repulsive, and sometimes darkly hilarious. This isn't the version of the Middle Ages you'll find in a princess movie. This is the raw, grim, unfiltered reality. So get comfortable. You're not going to get lice from listening, probably. We'll begin with the moment you wake up in a medieval royal chamber. You're not a peasant. You're not a scullery maid. You're a highborn lady. You have power, jewels, and maybe a falcon for emotional support. But trust me, you're still going to smell like fermented rosewater and boiled cabbage by midday. Let's step into the sandals of a medieval noblewoman and see what awaits us beyond the velvet drapes of morning. You wake up, but not to birdsong or the gentle tinkling of harps. Instead, it's the sharp clatter of someone dropping a chamber pot across the stone floor 2 rooms down, followed by the unmistakable hiss of a very grumpy cat. Your back aches immediately, the first gift of the day, and your eyes sting from the low, oily smoke still hanging in the chamber air from the torch that burned all night. You're not in a cozy modern bed. You're in a state bed, supposedly the pinnacle of medieval luxury. Tall, heavy, carved wood canopy. Curtains made of thick wool, or if you're truly lucky, faded velvet. But the mattress, it's a lumpy sack stuffed with straw, feathers, and possibly a few things you'd rather not investigate. You shift, and a puff of dust rises into the cold air. Something crunches under your shoulder. You don't want to know. The sheets? Not washed. Not in weeks, maybe months. Linen was expensive, laborious to clean, and changing sheets was something even royal women endured only for illness, childbirth, or after guests had noticed. You shift again, and the smell hits you, a warm, musty mix of old sweat, body oils, perfume, damp wool, and lavender sachets that gave up centuries ago. And underneath it all, something sharper, staler, yourself. The fire in the hearth has long since burned down, leaving only a few sad grey embers. Your breath fogs the air. The stone walls around you do nothing to trap heat, and the high ceilings are basically a cathedral for cold. You clutch the heavy blanket closer. It's trimmed in fur, but lined with scratchy linen, cold to the touch, heavy enough to pin your legs in place, and reeking faintly of the musk of whatever animal died to make it. Possibly more than one. Now comes the second wave of awareness. Your body. You itch. You always itch. Your scalp feels tight from the elaborate braids your maid wound into your hair 2 days ago. Your skin is dry from the smoke, yet slick where sweat collected under your nightgown during the night. And your nightgown, which you slept in, is the same chemise you wore the day before, and the day before that. Soft from wear, but yellowed under the arms, and absolutely no longer innocent. Your mouth is dry, bitter. You taste sleep and last night's spiced wine. There's no toothpaste waiting for you, no mouthwash. Your tongue feels like it has its own coating of wool. You press your lips together and wonder when you'll next find a rosewater rinse, or if today's dental hygiene will be chewing cloves and pretending they work. There's a movement beside you. You're not alone. Of course you're not. You're a highborn woman. You don't sleep in solitude. No, curled up at the foot of your bed is a maidservant, snoring lightly. She's been there since midnight, in case you woke with a nightmare or needed to pee and couldn't find your slippers. Not that she could do much more than fetch a cloth or hold a candle. Still, it's protocol. Royal women are never truly alone, not even in sleep. The window is still shuttered, not glass, of course. You're in the 14th century. You have oiled parchment, or thin horn, maybe slitted wooden shutters. No light gets through unless someone opens them, which they don't. Not unless they want to let in the cold or the stink from the castle courtyard. And that stink, oh, it's there, always faint, always lingering, like a ghost that forgot to leave. It's a complex blend. Wood smoke, sweat, rotten rushes on the floor, mold, faint traces of chamber pot. The perfume of the Middle Ages wasn't roses. It was life, decomposing slowly in corners. You shift to sit upright. Slowly, carefully. Your bones feel older than you are, which is probably 18 or 20, but in medieval years, that's basically retirement age. You've already had children, maybe, or at least miscarriages. Maybe you're lucky, maybe you're not. Either way, the wear shows. The cold gets into your joints before the sunlight does. Your feet slip into fur-lined slippers waiting by the bed. They're soft, slightly damp, always slightly damp. There's no such thing as dryness in a castle built of porous stone, sitting above a moat, in a country that hasn't seen the sun since Pentecost. Somewhere down the corridor, a bell rings. Not a clock, a bell. Time in your world is measured in prayers, matins, lauds, prime. And the bells don't ask your opinion. It is morning. It is time to begin the day. Whether you want to or not, a handmaiden enters. She doesn't knock. There's no point. No one knocks in a royal household. You are expected to be awake, even when you're not. She pulls back the bed curtains, revealing you in your disheveled gown and sour breath. But she doesn't react. She's seen worse. Everyone in this place has. The bedclothes are straightened. A basin of water is brought in, cold, of course. No plumbing, no pipes. Water drawn by hand, carted upstairs in sloshing pewter pitchers by girls with strong arms and few teeth. The ritual begins. You're not expected to wash yourself. That's for commoners. No, you'll be wiped, dabbed, rinsed. Your maid dips a linen cloth into the basin and begins the process. Your face, your hands, your neck, not your armpits, not your legs. That's for another day, perhaps Sunday. Perhaps not at all. Bathing too often is frowned upon. Your physician says it opens the pores, lets illness in. Bathing too seldom is also a problem, but easier to hide with oils, powders, and perfume. Your hair is unbraided. It takes 20 minutes, 3 combs, and a lot of wincing. It's knotted, dry, full of ash. Combing isn't about beauty. It's about bugs, fleas, lice, the occasional beetle. Royalty does not escape the crawl of medieval wildlife. You just pretend you do. And now your skin is scented. Rose water, if it's available. Lavender oil, if not. Musk, if you're married. Something to attract. Something primal. Something your priest would probably frown upon, but your husband demands. You are finally upright, washed, scented, combed. You feel only slightly more alive. You glance out the shutter, now cracked open. Fog, damp, grey. Another day in your royal life begins. Not with sunshine, not with song, but with cold fingers, burning lungs, itchy skin, and the intimate knowledge that even in the highest chambers of the tallest towers, no one, not even a queen, escapes the grime. You shuffle to the long table beside your bed, not a breakfast nook, not a quaint corner for leisure, but a slab of oak covered in linens that haven't been laundered in recent memory. A silver pitcher, a basin, and a cloth are waiting, but there is no soap. Not really. Just a chunk of coarse lye-based detergent that smells faintly of sheep and strongly of burning regret. Your maid helps you splash your face. The water is cold enough to bite. Your skin recoils. There is no warm tap, no steam, no citrus-scented foam that leaves you glowing. This is hygiene by necessity, not by luxury. And it is barely effective. You swish your mouth with wine, a weak, watered-down claret from the kitchen below. Mouthwash in your world is alcohol, not mint. You swish, you spit. Maybe into the basin, maybe out the window. It depends on your mood and who you think might be passing below. Your teeth? That's a different matter. There is no toothbrush. There is no paste. Just a frayed twig, dipped in salt or ashes, and rubbed over your molars like a goat trying to clean a brick wall. Sometimes, powdered charcoal is added, a favorite among noble women who wish to keep their teeth white, which, in practice, means scratching off the top layer of enamel until your smile is permanently sensitive. Most royal women had bad breath. Everyone did. The diet saw to that. Meat heavy, bread heavy. Not a lot of roughage, not a lot of citrus, and your physicians still believe bad breath is a spiritual issue, not a dental one. Humors, they call it. You're imbalanced. You need herbs, or bloodletting, or prayer. You wipe your mouth with the corner of your chemise and pretend not to notice the streak of wine left on your chin. Your maid notices. She says nothing. It's not her place. Now comes the hair. Your hair is your pride, but also your burden. Long, thick, heavy, beautiful, they say. Tangled, they never mention. It has been brushed for the last 20 minutes with a comb carved from bone and oiled with rosehip to keep the lice from settling in. It doesn't always work. You do not shave. You do not pluck. You have no razors. At best, a pair of shears to trim your brows. Some women singe unwanted hairs with a candle. Others use pumice stones, yes. Literal volcanic rock to scrape skin smooth. The result is often red, sore, and uneven. But modesty demands it. Smooth skin is pure. Hair is scandal. Your underarms, however, are mostly ignored. Royal sweat is still sweat. Perfume is your only salvation. Your maid dusts your body with ground orris root, a fragrant powder that smells faintly like violets. It's soft, chalky, and hides more than it heals. You lift your arms, she pats. You turn, she pats again. You are powdered like pastry. And now, breakfast. It's not what you think. You don't descend to a grand banquet hall, flanked by trumpets and silver trays. That's for feasts, for spectacle, for royal theatre. In truth, your breakfast is served in your solar, your private chamber, and it arrives lukewarm, wrapped in cloth, carried by a yawning servant who hasn't had his own meal yet. The plate is tin, or maybe pewter. Silver is for visitors. On it sits a hunk of coarse black bread, heavy, dense, baked with rye and barley, and, if the millstone was old, a fair amount of grit. You chew slowly, carefully. It's hard enough to chip a molar, and you've already cracked one last len. Beside the bread, a slab of cheese, sharp, waxy, left out too long. You sniff it before biting. You always sniff. Last year, a cousin died of bad cheese. No one talks about it. Sometimes there's a boiled egg, overcooked and tinged green at the edges, or a bit of cold meat, usually salted pork, bacon, if the household is lucky, but it's mostly fat and gristle. You chew because it's expected, not because you enjoy it. There is no fruit. It's winter. Apples are shriveled. Pears are mush. Berries don't exist. If you're desperate, there's a spoonful of preserved quince sticky, overly sweet, and buzzing with flies. And then there's the drink, wine. Always wine. Weak, warm, and slightly sour. But safer than water, which even in a castle can taste like frogs and illness. You drink slowly, not for pleasure, for survival. Milk is rare, often raw, usually reserved for children. Sometimes you steal a sip from the pitcher meant for your youngest daughter. It tastes like the cow it came from and the stable it stood in. You don't complain. Not allowed. Royalty does not complain about breakfast. But in your mind, you compare it to what the monks eat: fresh pottage, baked apples, warm milk, and you resent them, just a little. They pretend to be holy, but their kitchens are always full, and as you eat, the servants clean your chamber. They change the rushes on the floor, the medieval version of carpet. Fresh reeds scattered with dried herbs, meant to absorb smells and noise, but mostly they just shift the scent from old rot to herbal rot. If you're lucky, they include lavender. If not, mint. If they've run out, then it's just dried hay, coated in dust and covered in the footprints of mice. A maid empties your chamber pot. You don't look. You pretend it doesn't exist. But it does, and it's been sitting in the corner of your room all night, fermenting. It's heavy now. She carries it away carefully, down the hall, and dumps it into the castle latrine, a vertical shaft that leads to a pit below. Sometimes it overflows. Sometimes it freezes. Sometimes, in the summer, it bubbles. You don't think about it. You finish your bread. It sits in your stomach like a stone. Your breath still stinks. Your hair is still oily. Your chemise clings damply to your back. And your bones are already sore from sitting in a chair designed more for posture than for comfort. You take another sip of wine. You are royal. You are elegant. You are a symbol of wealth and purity. And you are filthy in ways no one dares to name. This is how the day begins. Let's begin with your clothing. Because as a royal woman in the Middle Ages, you're expected to wear a lot of it. You don't dress yourself, of course. You are not some peasant fumbling with laces. No. 2 women help you, one to tie, one to watch and pass judgment. You stand like a mannequin, while layers of fabric, discomfort, and misplaced elegance are slowly wrapped around you. First comes the chemise, the base layer. It's made of linen rough, stiff, and yellowed with time. It's supposed to be white, But nothing in your wardrobe ever truly is. Laundry is rare after all, and soap is a luxury. It clings to your skin from yesterday's sweat, barely dry from the last failed attempt to wash it in cold, greasy water. Over that, you slip into your kirtle a fitted underdress that laces up the sides. It's tighter than it should be, not because you're gaining weight, but because the fabric has shrunk in the damp air. You wince as your maid pulls the laces. One of your ribs shifts. You say nothing. Nobility doesn't complain about circulation. Next comes the gown, the main event. It's made of wool. Always wool. Sometimes dyed, sometimes embroidered. But always heavy, always hot. Even in winter, you sweat underneath it. And in summer, you feel like you've been swaddled in damp furnace lining. The fabric scratches your neck, chafes your arms, pulls at your hips as you walk. But you must wear it, not for comfort, for status. And the more elaborate your dress, the more miserable your morning. There's no underwear. Not really. Maybe a linen wrap if you're lucky. But there are no brassieres, no elastic, no waistband, just lacing, pins, and the constant hum of mild suffering beneath your skirt. Then comes the surcoat, an outer layer, often sleeveless, designed to show off your figure while still hiding it. The neckline plunges so low that your chemise becomes the real bodice. Your breasts are squished and lifted into a shape not chosen by you, but by fashion. Your sleeves trail along the floor. They collect everything: ash, hair, rat droppings, mud. The more fabric, the higher your status, but also the more likely you are to trip walking upstairs. A belt is added, decorative, pointless, heavy. More embroidery, more sparkle, more weight. You are now officially dressed, and you haven't even put on your headdress. It changes by the decade. One year, it's a stiff linen veil, shaped like a horned crescent moon. Another year, it's a towering padded roll that makes your head look like a pastry. Always pinned, always tight, always so hot you feel your scalp sweat by mid-morning. Hair is a scandal. Married women cover it. Unmarried girls braid it. But you must mold it, restrain it, decorate it. You are not allowed to feel the wind on your scalp unless you're in a scandalous mood. And shoes? Thin leather, flat, sometimes pointed toes. Always cold, always slippery, no left or right. Just two identical foot-shaped pouches that do nothing to protect you from the stones, the frost, or the puddle of something ominous near the chapel door. Fashion hurt, and you are required to suffer beautifully. Now let's talk about your home. A castle, they call it. A royal seat, a fortress, a palace of splendor. It is none of those things. It's a giant stone refrigerator with drafty hallways, rotten floors, and a smell that moves in and never pays rent. The walls sweat. The ceiling weeps. The corners hide entire civilizations of spiders who fear neither man nor God. The windows are narrow slits, covered in parchment or horn. Sunlight barely squeezes through. Air does not, unless the wind is howling. Then it enters freely, slicing across your room like a knife dipped in ice water. You walk the halls in layers, but your breath still fogs the air. Tapestries hang from the walls, not for beauty, for insulation. But even the thickest wool can't fight a February wind sneaking through the cracks in the stone. Beneath your feet, rushes cover the floor. Or they used to. Now they're a mat of rotting herbs, straw, animal hair, and the things that drop from people's bodies and clothing over time. If you drop a ring onto the floor, you say goodbye to it forever. It's gone, swallowed by the mulch of centuries. The fireplace roars, but the heat doesn't stay. It gathers in a 3-foot radius near the hearth and then disappears into the rafters. If you're standing near the fire, your skin burns. Step 5 feet away, and your toes are numb. Smoke rarely escapes fully. Chimneys are moody. Sometimes they work. Sometimes they belch a cloud so thick you can't see your hand. Your eyes sting. Your hair absorbs it. Your gown now smells like ham that's been left too close to the fire. The toilet? We've discussed that already. A carved bench over a vertical shaft. If you're lucky, if not, a simple pot. Or a visit to the garderobe, where the smell hits you before the cold stone does. Rats are a constant. So are fleas. And birds sometimes nest in the rafters, dropping feathers and worse. You once woke up with a dead pigeon near your hearth. No one questioned it. At night, the cold intensifies. Your bed is an island of warmth in a sea of stone. You climb in with your chemise, your fur cover, and perhaps a warming pan of embers that someone placed under the blanket an hour earlier. It helps, briefly, then it goes cold, or burns a hole in the mattress, or both. Your chamber is never truly silent. Pipes groan, rats scratch, someone snores down the hall. The wind cries through the arrow slits like a ghost that forgot to move on. You are royalty. You have silk, jewels, tapestries, gold embroidery. But you also have lice, cold feet, cracked lips, and a wardrobe that actively hates you. And when someone visits and praises your luxurious surroundings, you smile, you nod, and you lie through your teeth. You might think that being a royal woman in the Middle Ages means sitting around all day in silk robes, eating sugared figs, and waving gracefully from a castle balcony. You would be so wrong, because while you're technically above labor, you are not above effort. In fact, every waking moment of your life is filled with the exhausting task of performing royalty, of embodying grace, power, and patience, while secretly trying not to faint from heat, hunger, or whatever unholy infection is currently living under your left thumbnail. Let's begin with your schedule, not your own schedule. Oh no, you don't have one of those. You live by the calendar of saints, the toll of bells, and the constant shuffling of servants, tutors, priests, stewards, tailors, and bored cousins who want to talk politics before breakfast. The morning begins with prayer. Always. You kneel at your private altar, legs aching, stomach rumbling, still tasting your own sour breath, and recite psalms until your knees go numb. You cross yourself. You mutter your thanks. You try not to let your mind wander to breakfast. And then come your obligations. You are not allowed to be idle. That is a sin. Idleness invites temptation. And temptation, you've been told, is basically Satan in a red hat waiting behind the drapery with a smile and a lute. So you sew, always sewing. Embroidery is your battlefield. You spend hours each day hunched over your hoop, stabbing cloth with a bone needle while your fingers bleed into the linen. You are expected to create beautiful, delicate things. Coats of arms, floral borders, tapestries of saints with impossibly smug faces. If you mess up, you unpick the stitches. You start again. If your work is sloppy, people will talk. If it's too perfect, people will still talk. Nothing is neutral in court life. Every stitch is a statement. Every missed thread is a rumor waiting to bloom. Sometimes you're called to supervise the household. That means standing in the freezing great hall with your ladies, inspecting linens, approving menus, and pretending to understand the kitchen budget when all you really want is a clean spoon that doesn't smell like goat. You make decisions about herbs for the apothecary, but only the safe ones. The others, the ones used for contraception or seduction or midwifery, are left to whispered conversations behind closed doors. You must appear pious, even when you're managing the very real logistics of bleeding and childbirth. You listen to petitions from villagers, from merchants, from minor knights who want land for loyalty. You nod while they speak. You smile politely, but inside, You're cold, tired, and focused entirely on how tight your corset is around your ribs. You entertain visitors, nobles, clergy, foreign dignitaries. Their names blur together. You make small talk about weather, alliances, and marriages you hope to avoid. Every conversation is laced with meaning. Every compliment is a trap. And every joke must be laughed at, even if it makes your skin crawl. Then there are the feasts. Oh yes, those grand displays of courtly elegance. They sound glamorous, but they're a full-time performance. You sit on a throne-like chair, back straight, hands folded, trying not to choke on a cold pigeon pie while the minstrels play something that sounds like a wounded donkey learning the flute. You must eat just enough to seem human, but not too much, or someone will whisper that you're indulgent. You must smile at your husband's jokes. You must listen to the bishop's long-winded stories about relics. You must not, under any circumstances, get food on your gown. You'll never hear the end of it. And once the feast ends, you don't rest. No, you dance. Your feet ache. Your corset digs. Your bladder is full. But the music starts, and you're swept into the hall by a sweating nobleman who smells like garlic and ambition. You curtsy. You step. You spin. You smile. Because if you don't, someone will write a poem about how the Lady of the Rose was sour of face. And you don't need that kind of press. Even when you're not in public, you're working. You're learning new prayers, practicing your French, being coached on how to walk with exactly the right amount of sway, studying how to sit, how to laugh, how to faint gracefully without looking like you're just tired of being alive. And make no mistake, you're surviving too. You must watch what you say. Gossip is currency. One wrong word can cost your family a title, a marriage alliance, or a dowry. You smile even when you want to scream. You agree when you know they're wrong. You pretend not to hear your husband flirt with the young girl pouring wine. You must manage your fertility without ever admitting you're managing it. The midwife knows, the herbalist knows, but the priest must never know, or you'll find yourself doing penance in public, holding a candle, weeping for a sin you committed, in defense of your own body. You must hide your illness. Fevers are a sign of weakness. Coughing makes people fear plague. Bleeding too much raises suspicions of punishment from God. You are expected to be pale, serene, and eternally composed even when your insides are boiling or your back is splitting in two. And heaven forbid you show emotion. Anger? That's unladylike. Sadness? That's vanity. Joy? That's foolishness. You're allowed one emotion, calm detachment, with a hint of piety, and maybe a small, controlled tear at a funeral, just enough to show your heart, not so much that it smudges your coal. Even rest is regulated. You don't sleep when you're tired. You sleep when the castle sleeps. You lie on your straw mattress, surrounded by shadows, listening for footsteps that don't belong. And if you do find peace for a few hours, the bell will wake you before dawn for matins. Because God doesn't care if you had nightmares. Royalty does not oversleep. So no, you don't carry buckets or plough fields or blacken your hands in the forge. But don't mistake that for ease. Your labour is invisible, wrapped in lace, performed with a straight spine and a pleasant smile, but it is labour nonetheless. Endless, silent, exhausting. You are a royal woman, and you are working all the time. You wake each morning not just to the cold or the noise of castle life, but to the awareness that your soul, your eternal soul, is under constant surveillance, not from guards, not from courtiers, but from God, the saints, and the ever-watchful, ever-listening network of priests, confessors, relics, and local rumours that dictate every choice you make. As a royal woman, religion isn't just part of your life. It is your life. It's sewn into the hem of your gown, baked into your bread, whispered in your ear from the cradle, and scrawled into the margins of every letter you send. From the moment you were born, you were told this. You are Eve. You are temptation. You are the reason man fell. And every step you take in a silk slipper is 1 inch closer to sin. No pressure. Your religious duties begin before sunrise, with matins cold, half-asleep prayers recited in Latin, a language you may or may not fully understand. You kneel. You murmur. You cross yourself again and again. Every movement is prescribed. Every breath is weighted with expectation. Later, you attend Mass not once a week, but daily, if you're devout, which you must be. People are watching. You sit in a private chapel near the altar, elevated slightly so the peasants can admire your piety from below. But they must not see your hair. You must keep your head covered, because uncovered hair is an invitation. To whom? It doesn't matter. Someone. Everyone. Sin is always looking. You listen to the sermon. If it's a good day, the priest only talks about eternal fire once or twice. If it's a bad day, he reminds the congregation that women are vessels of corruption, prone to pride, and responsible for all the lust in the world. You smile politely. You nod. But inside, you shrink. Because they're not just talking about women in general. They're talking about you. Your confessor meets with you weekly, sometimes daily. He asks questions, personal ones, terrifying ones. He wants to know if you've had impure thoughts, if you've felt anger, if you've taken pleasure in food, or vanity in compliments, or laziness in prayer, or affection during marital relations. Yes, even that. You are expected to confess your sins even if you're not sure you've committed them. Because omission is also a sin. Ignorance is a sin. Uncertainty is suspect. So you confess, you cry, you accept your penance, prayer, fasting, charity, shame. You wear a ring of gold on your finger, but a noose of guilt around your spirit. But religion isn't just about formal church doctrine. It's everywhere. In your bathwater, in your pregnancies, in your food, in your breath. If you sneeze too often, someone will tell you it's a sign of bad spirits, or worse, that the devil has entered your body. If you sleep too heavily, it's sloth. If you laugh too loudly, it's pride. If you bleed too much during your courses, you're being punished for Eve's curiosity. There are saints for everything. Saints to help you conceive. Saints to protect your womb. Saints to keep your husband faithful, although frankly no one ever claimed that one worked particularly well. You wear relics sewn into little pouches beneath your bodice, scraps of cloth touched to holy bones, a chip of a saint's finger, a splinter from the true cross, probably. These protect you from sin, or plague, or jealousy, depending on who blessed them. There's holy water in every room, sprinkled in the corners to keep demons out. But the demons are persistent. According to your priest, they especially like to crawl into women. They enjoy our thoughts, he says, our blood, our dreams. So naturally, you sleep with a crucifix above your bed and a vial of saint's oil beneath your pillow just in case your nightmares get too real. Your dreams, by the way, are suspect. Visions from God? Maybe. Messages from hell? More likely. So you do not speak of your dreams. You keep them locked inside your skull, rattling quietly like condemned witches, waiting for trial. When your monthly bleeding begins, you are considered unclean. No one says it aloud, but you know. You are excused from certain prayers. You do not touch sacred objects. You do not approach the altar. You stay quietly in your room, pretending to embroider while hoping no one notices the stain. If your cycle is irregular, people whisper. If you bleed too little, they suspect infertility. Too much, they suspect sin. Or worse, witchcraft. Yes, That word follows every woman in every corner of the castle. Witch. They say witches make men impotent. Witches spoil milk. Witches cause miscarriages. Witches hide herbs in their embroidery boxes and give each other coded glances during feast days. You once had a midwife who suggested drinking raspberry leaf tea to ease your cramps. She was gone the next week. No one would say why. You still think of her because, as a royal woman, even knowledge can be dangerous. You must be smart, but not too smart. Pious, but not sanctimonious. Modest, but still pleasing. Chaste, but fertile. Holy, but silent. Your entire body is a theological minefield. You are told that childbirth will hurt because of Eve. You are told your beauty is a test. You are told your pain is purifying. You are told your joy is suspicious. You are told over and over that your duty is to suffer quietly and smile while doing it. The church is everywhere. In your food, in your fears, in your letters, in your bed. You sign your name with Deo Gratias, thanks be to God. Even when you're furious, even when you're exhausted, you give alms to the poor, not because you want to, but because they are the hands of Christ, and you are his servant. You wear a jeweled crucifix around your neck. It presses against your skin, a constant reminder that salvation has a weight and you must carry it daily. You wear it over your heart, and some days it's the only warm thing you own. You're hungry. You've been up since before dawn praying, being dressed, correcting a scribe who can't spell your cousin's name properly, and all you've had is a crust of bread, some bitter wine, and a hunk of cheese that might have been fresher last week. But now, finally, it's time for the main meal of the day. It's not dinner, and it's not lunch. It's something in between, usually served around 10 or 11 inches the morning. In theory, it's a feast. In practice, it's a performance. You're not eating, you're appearing. And your appetite is not the most important part of the table. You enter the great hall, flanked by ladies in waiting and silently judging onlookers. The air is thick with smoke, not from incense, but from a dozen fires, struggling to cook 3 boars, 6 swans, and a suspiciously large pot of eel stew at the same time. The smell is overwhelming. Meat, grease, old ale, wet wool, and burnt onions. It clings to the tapestries, to your sleeves, to your skin. No matter how many rose petals you sew into your gown's hem, you will leave this feast smelling like roasted pig and candle wax. The table is long, wood, splintered, stained, covered in linen, if the occasion is fancy, covered in yesterday's crumbs, if it's not. You don't have your own plate. Not exactly. You share a trench, a slab of stale bread hollowed out to hold food, meant to soak up juices, meant to be edible. But no one ever eats the trench. That's for servants, or the poor. You push it aside discreetly and pretend not to see the blackened ants climbing inside it. The food arrives. You are handed a small knife, your personal one, which you carry everywhere, and which doubles as both utensil and self-defense in a pinch. There are no forks yet, just your knife. And fingers. You dab your fingers in a bowl of water scented with herbs. This is considered sufficient hygiene for the next 3 courses. You begin with meat. Always meat. More meat than you want, and almost never the good kind. Today it's boiled mutton stringy, grey, floating in fat. The cook has attempted a sauce. It is brown. It smells faintly of nutmeg and regret. You take a small bite, smile politely, and pretend you're too full for more. Next comes game pie deer or pigeon, or something the cook insists is rabbit but feels suspiciously bony. It is heavily spiced, not for taste but to cover the fact that it's been aging under a cloth for 4 days. You chew slowly, very slowly. There are vegetables, but they're overcooked to oblivion. Cabbage turned to mush, turnips that bite back, and leeks that linger in your mouth until vespers. There's fish, if it's Friday, salted, dried, then rehydrated in wine. You pray for wine. The alternative is beer thick enough to chew, or water that comes with its own tadpoles. And of course, dessert. If you're lucky, it's spiced fruit cooked in honey or a custard tart that hasn't yet turned green around the edges. If you're really lucky, it's marzipan molded into the shape of a castle, or a swan, or something deeply confusing like a lion riding a fish. You applaud the artistry. You nibble a corner. You do not eat the entire thing. That would be vulgar. Throughout the meal, entertainers perform. Sometimes music, a harp or lute, but more often something ridiculous. A man who juggles apples while reciting psalms. A woman who sings while balancing a candle on her forehead. A fool who makes loud, crude jokes about your cousin's marriage, and everyone laughs, even your cousin. You smile. You must. Sometimes the bishop attends and looks uncomfortable. You watch him eat with 2 fingers while trying to ignore the juggler spinning knives just inches from his mitre. Gossip flows with the wine. This is where royal women shine. You say little, but you listen. You hear which noblewoman is mysteriously pregnant, which knight is suspected of heresy, which lord is spending too much time in the stables with the young squire. You tuck it away. You smile. You nod. You never, ever speak without purpose, because one wrong sentence, and you're the subject of tomorrow's whispers. Once the feast ends, you're allowed to retire, but not for rest, for entertainment. Afternoons are reserved for courtly diversions designed to seem elegant but often exhausting. There are games, chess, of course, a slow dance of strategy. You're expected to play well enough to entertain, but not so well that you humiliate the wrong person. There are storytellers reciting long, tedious epics about knights, dragons, and maidens who die beautifully because they refuse to marry the wrong man. Everyone listens. No one truly enjoys it. There are poems, some so full of longing and loss you feel your chest ache. Others are thinly veiled insults dressed in rhyme. You pretend not to notice. On feast days, there are tournaments, jousts, displays of martial skill. You sit in the stands, roasting in velvet, pretending to enjoy the endless parade of men stabbing each other for honor and the chance to win your glove. You throw it anyway. It's symbolic. You've never spoken to the knight who caught it. During festivals, entertainment gets rowdier. Mummers perform plays with masks and bawdy jokes. There are fire breathers, bear baitings, and mystery plays where villagers reenact biblical stories with more shouting than scripture probably intended. You're expected to attend, to smile, to clap politely when Saint Sebastian is martyred with pig's blood and a cabbage arrow. And then, of course, dancing. You always dance. Even if your ankles are sore, even if your dress weighs more than your horse, you curtsy, you glide, you twirl. Sometimes a nobleman steps too close. You pretend not to notice. Sometimes your husband flirts too openly. You pretend not to care. Sometimes the music is so loud and chaotic you feel your skull pulse. You dance anyway, because royal women must always appear content, entertained, elegant. Even if your stomach aches from half-rotten fish, even if your ears are still ringing from the lute solo played with a chicken bone, even if all you want is a quiet meal, warm bread, and a room with no people, no music, and no smells. But you are royalty, and so you feast, and you perform, and you smile through the stink of spoiled wine and someone reciting epic poetry about a knight who died from constipation. You don't talk about it. No one does. Not in public, not at feasts, not in court. You smile, you nod, you say you're tired, or fasting, or just a little faint from the heat. But in the cold hours of morning, when your chamber is still and your bones ache in the bed you didn't sleep in, You feel it. The fear, because in the Middle Ages, illness isn't an inconvenience. It's a summons from God, from death, from something crawling in your blood, or floating in the air, or hidden in last night's stew. And when you're a royal woman, the stakes are even higher, because you're not allowed to be sick. You are a symbol, a womb, a contract wrapped in velvet. Your health is national policy. So when your head throbs, or your chest tightens, or your stomach turns, you pray it's something small, something survivable. Not that cough, not those spots, not the plague. Because once illness takes hold, nothing, not jewels, not gowns, not saints, not even rank can save you. You've seen it happen. You remember Lady Isolde radiant, strong, admired. One fever, and she was gone in 3 days. You remember how they wrapped her in linen, stuffed her mouth with herbs, and buried her before sundown because no one wanted to touch the sheets. You remember the plague bells, the carts, the silence. You can still smell the smoke from the bonfires they lit in the courtyards, as if fire could drive away death. Your own health is a fragile illusion. Your skin is pale, your body thin. People call you delicate. They mean it as a compliment. But you know the truth. You are always one bad meal, one chilled footstep, one cursed relic away from disappearing. So you do what you can, what the doctors tell you, which is a nightmare. They arrive with long robes, waxed moustaches, and books full of Greek words they barely understand. They examine your urine in glass bottles. They sniff your breath. They look at your tongue and declare that your yellow bile is in rebellion. Then they recommend their cures. Bloodletting is the favorite. Always bloodletting. Out with the bad humors. Slice a vein in your arm. Let it drip into a bowl while you faint quietly. Or leeches those soft, slick monsters that attach to your thighs or neck, feeding gently, smugly, while you lie there and pretend you're not screaming inside. If not blood, then vomit. A potion of mustard and vinegar, maybe wormwood and bile. You'll throw up until your stomach is empty and your soul is halfway out of your mouth. Then they'll say, "Better now." Yes, as if that's a question with only one allowed answer. Then there are the herbs. You've drunk infusions of sage, valerian, fennel, and nettles. Some taste like boiled grass. Others taste like death. One time, you drank a decoction so bitter you wept mid-swallow, and they called that a good sign. You've been wrapped in mustard poultices, scrubbed with vinegar, and placed near rosemary smoke to cleanse your lungs. You've been told to wear amethysts for fevers, garlic for worms, and rub a dead toad on your stomach to draw out evil spirits. You've done all of it. Because the alternative is dying, and sometimes, even when you're not sick, they still say you're unwell. Too pale? Must be melancholy. Too red in the cheeks? Overheated humors. Not pregnant? Blocked womb. Needs warming. Too pregnant? The baby might be misaligned. Better tie a carved charm around your belly and pray it doesn't flip upside down. You've seen women die in childbirth. Many. They scream, they bleed, they beg, and you sit, gripping your rosary, trying not to vomit, as the midwives whisper about cursed hips and unlucky moon. Royal women are expected to die gracefully, and if you don't, you're expected to die quietly. You've heard of churching, the ceremony to purify a woman after childbirth, not to celebrate her survival, to cleanse her, because birth makes you unclean. Bleeding makes you unclean. Being a woman really is unclean. You've prayed over your own monthly cycle, terrified it might not come, or worse, that it won't stop. You've heard the rumors about the queen who bled for weeks, and how they burned her linens in secret and buried her in silence. You've seen noble women grow thin, cough blood, fade into tapestries like ghosts no one wants to acknowledge. No one talks about cancer, pneumonia, or tuberculosis. They just call it a wasting illness, or a divine affliction, or God's will, quote. And when someone dies, as they often do, the same rituals are repeated. The bell, the salt, the herbs, the wax cross, the fear. The body is taken quickly, sometimes still warm, because people fear it might rise again. You do not attend the funeral, unless it's family. Even then, you wear black scratchy wool, dyed in grief, and sit in a cold chapel, while a priest reminds everyone that women are vessels of sin and death comes for all. The smell of incense mixes with the memory of blood, and you wonder quietly, always quietly, when it will be your turn, because illness is never far. Even now, as you sit in your solar, surrounded by lace and candles and tiny, beautiful things, you feel the chill creeping into your toes, the ache behind your eyes, the sudden cough that rattles deeper than it should. You say nothing, you smile. You drink a little more wine. You chew a clove. You rub rosemary behind your ears. You are not sick. You are not sick. You are not. Because once they say you're ill, the world changes. The windows are shuttered. The priests arrive. And the whispers begin. You are a royal woman, a daughter of power, a queen, a duchess, a noble lady with a name that echoes through courtly halls. But before all of that, you are a body, a vessel, a future mother, or, worse, a failure to become one. You are not raised to rule. You are raised to marry. From childhood, your value is measured not in books read or thoughts spoken, but in dowries, virtue, and the firmness of your womb. You're taught to sow before you speak, to nod before you question, to bleed without complaint and smile as the ink dries on the marriage contract you didn't sign yourself. And when the time comes, often as early as 12 or 13, you are sent away to a husband who is older, richer, and deeply invested in whether your stomach will swell with heirs. Your wedding night is not a celebration. It is an event, observed, verified, sometimes physically checked the next morning for signs of deflowering blood on the sheets, bruises on the thighs, silence in the eyes. You are congratulated. You feel like something valuable has been taken and passed around in whispers, and then, almost immediately, the waiting begins. Waiting for signs, missed courses, tender breasts, vomiting in the mornings, waiting to see if this month, this time, you will finally be what they want. Pregnant. Because everything depends on it. Your value, your safety, your future, your marriage. You must produce sons. You must continue the line. You must not miscarry. You must not give birth to a daughter. Or, if you do, you must smile and say how lovely she is, while inside you feel the cold edge of failure tightening around your ribcage. When the child quickens, when you feel that first flutter of movement inside your belly, you are both overjoyed and terrified, because now the real risk begins. Pregnancy is not a glowing time of anticipation. It is a countdown to possible death. Your body swells, your back aches, your joints loosen. You are hungrier, thirstier, angrier. Your gums bleed, your moods shift, and the midwives smile and say, "That means it will be a strong boy." But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes the baby doesn't move again. Sometimes the blood comes early. Sometimes there is no birth, only grief, hidden in silence and whispered away like a shameful draught through the castle hallways. And if the baby survives, if the birth happens, you survive, maybe because childbirth in the Middle Ages is not a private moment. It's not dim lights and soothing voices. It's a war, and you're the battlefield. You are laid on a bed, or the floor, or a birthing stool. You are surrounded by women, midwives, nurses, attendants, whispering prayers and biting their lips because they've seen this go wrong so many times. You scream, you bleed, you tear, you faint. You pray for strength, for mercy, for a fast labor. You beg the Virgin Mary to stand beside you. And if the baby comes bloody, squalling, slippery, they say, "Thanks be to God," and wrap it in cloth and press it to your chest. If it's a boy, they ring the bells. If it's a girl, they speak more softly. If it's stillborn, they don't speak at all. You're expected to recover quickly, to smile, to nurse, to be grateful, but inside, your body is broken. Your hips are sore. Your breasts are cracked. You smell of milk and blood and sweat, and you still wear a crown. People visit. They congratulate you. They ask if the baby sleeps. No one asks if you do. You might go through this 5 times, 10 times, more. Some women have 15 children. Others have 15 losses. You grieve in silence, because mourning a miscarriage, especially one no one else saw, is considered indulgent. There are no shrines for lost babies, no markers for unborn heirs, just faded names in family Bibles and a hollowness in your womb that no relic or prayer can ease. As your children grow, you begin the next phase of fear, because being born is just the beginning. Now they must survive. Child mortality is cruelly high. Fevers steal toddlers in a single night. Teething becomes deadly. Infections take daughters by the dozens. You weep in private again and again. Even when they live, your role is not maternal in the modern sense. You do not nurse them, that is for wet nurses. You do not raise them, that is for governesses, tutors, servants. You observe. You arrange their marriages. You teach your daughters how to be quiet, pretty, and dutiful. You teach your sons how to pray, rule, and not trust their cousins. You are a mother, but also a manager, a political piece, a breeder of heirs. Family life is not cozy. It is structured, cold, monitored. Even your marriage, the very core of your household, is a public agreement. It may be affectionate. It may even have sparks of real tenderness, but it is not yours. It belongs to the dynasty. And if you fail in your duties, if you do not produce heirs, if your children die, if your husband finds someone younger, prettier, or more fertile, you can be set aside, not divorced that would require papal approval, but separated, sent to a convent, shuffled to the edge of court life like a faded tapestry. Your life, once full of noise and gold and purpose, can narrow to a single candle-lit chamber and a spinning wheel. And still, you are expected to smile, to give alms, to pray for the very people who forgot you. Because even in family, especially in family, medieval women are never quite safe. You are a mother, you are a wife, you are a daughter, but above all, you are watching, waiting, bracing yourself for the next child, the next loss, the next rumor, and praying not for happiness, just survival. The sun, if it ever appeared at all, now slants low through the high, narrow windows. The afternoon has arrived, the part of the day that feels neither sacred nor restful. It's not for prayer, and it's not for feasting. It's for business, for arguments, for appearances, for things that require your presence, but never your opinion. Because in royal life, your role is to be seen, not heard, unless someone powerful asks. And even then, your words had better be gilded and vague. You've eaten, prayed, maybe sown a little. But now, you attend the audiences. The throne room fills not with friends, but with courtiers, petitioners, schemers, offended knights demanding land, greedy merchants demanding debts, clergy demanding penance for sins you haven't committed yet. You sit beside your husband or stand behind him, depending on your rank. Your dress is heavy, your expression serene, your thoughts spinning. You recognize the men speaking. You know which ones lie, which ones steal, which ones beat their wives, or gamble their fortunes, or confess twice a week just to stay ahead of the rumors. But you say nothing, because these men have power. Even when they're wrong, even when they insult a servant, or spit on a messenger, or touch your hand for 1 second too long, you clench your teeth, you fold your hands, you smile, because royal women must remain unshaken even as the world cracks at their feet. Outside the castle, justice is being done, not the poetic kind, the violent kind. You hear the sounds from the courtyard, shouting, crying, the dull wet thud of punishment. Someone's been pilloried, locked by the neck, and wrists in a wooden frame, while townspeople throw rot at their face. Or worse, someone's being flogged. You try not to flinch at the sound of leather on flesh. You try not to imagine how close you've come, on occasion, to earning similar attention for the crime of speaking out of turn. There are hangings too, not frequent, but public. Always public. The gallows are built just outside the town gate. When executions happen, you can hear the cheers, or the silence. Royal women are not expected to attend. But sometimes, someone insists you show compassion by witnessing it from a high window. They say it's justice. You wonder if it's theatre. But inside the castle, punishment takes different forms. Servants are dismissed quietly, cruelly for stealing bread or whispering too loud. You've seen a girl whipped for breaking a dish, her face twisted in shame and pain, while her mistress pretended to look away. You once tried to intervene. You were told gently that you didn't understand discipline, that you were too soft, that mercy breeds disobedience. You've never forgotten the look on that girl's face. She disappeared 2 weeks later. No one asked where she went. Sometimes there are accusations, whispers of heresy, sodomy, witchcraft, always vague, always dangerous. One man denounced his own wife to avoid paying her dowry. Another burned his daughter's books to prove she wasn't consorting with demons. It's all theatre, and you're in the audience, silently applauding along with everyone else, because fear is contagious, and no one wants to be the next act. Inside your own circles, the danger is more polite, but just as sharp. A misplaced word at a feast, a poorly timed smile, an embroidered handkerchief found in the wrong man's sleeve. Scandal can unmake you, so you watch your tongue. You watch your friends. You watch everyone, even other women, because sometimes the worst threats wear silk and pearls. They compliment your hair, and then speak about you in riddles to the bishop the next day. They bring you gifts and ask innocent questions, and then hint that your daughter is too friendly with that musician from Milan. You play the game. You play it well. But some days you are so tired, and the peasants, the ones outside the castle walls, they are angry. You can feel it in the way they speak at market. You hear it in the sermons priests warning of pride, of greed, of lords who forget their souls. You've seen the unrest spreading, crop failures, tithes increased, taxes raised to fund some war you can't even name, men sharpening scythes and calling them plowshares, women begging at the gate for barley, for soap, for mercy. You give alms, you say prayers, but you also know if rebellion comes, they won't care that you handed out coins during Lent. They'll see the gold on your fingers, the embroidery on your sleeves, and they'll hate you just the same, not for what you've done, for what you represent. And yet, amid all this, you are still expected to host tea. Or something like it. Afternoon diversions, they call them. You sip watered wine with women who hate you. You embroider beside a duchess whose husband insulted yours at dinner. You smile through stories about dogs who wear velvet shoes while wondering if your son has dysentery again. Politeness is war. Gossip is weaponized. And still, You must perform, because everything, even peace, is temporary. The king could die, the court could move, the peasants could rise, the bishop could accuse, the queen could fall from favor. Everything can change in a heartbeat. So you stay poised, you stay quiet, you walk the line between grace and danger, knowing that one misstep could cost you your home, your future, your life. Afternoons in royal life are not idle. They are a balancing act of obedience and defiance, silence and survival. You live each day behind a veil of elegance, and every breath is a prayer not to be noticed by the wrong person. The sun sets slowly, but it always sets. And when it does, the world you've so carefully managed begins to change. In daylight, your castle seems strong, elegant, full of life. But when the light fades, it becomes something else entirely. You feel it in your body, a tension, a sense that the walls are listening, that something has shifted, not in the stones, but in the air. The courtiers retreat to their chambers, the servants whisper, the dogs grow restless, and deep within the fortress of carved oak and cold mortar, you, a royal woman, prepare for another night. You move through dim corridors, lit by torches and flickering rushlights. The air smells of smoke and melted tallow. Your slippers slide on the uneven stone. Rats scurry just out of view, darting between shadows that seem to multiply. You hold your skirts up. You walk faster, because at night, even queens feel fear. Your bedchamber is waiting, cold, quiet. The fire has been lit early, but it still hasn't warmed the air. The heavy curtains are drawn, the shutters closed, the chamber pot emptied. Though the smell lingers faint, metallic, sour, you change into your night chemise. It's damp from the washing basin. You shiver as it clings to your skin. Your maid brushes your hair slowly, rhythmically, with a comb carved from bone. It pulls at the knots. You don't complain. You're too tired. But you don't sleep yet. Because in the medieval world, night is not for sleeping. Not really. It's for listening, watching, waiting. Outside, the town is not asleep. The poor are still awake. The desperate, the drunk, the angry. Fires break out often. A tipped candle, a cooking hearth left smouldering. Wood ignites fast, and stone does nothing to stop it. You've seen flames crawl across rooftops like spiders made of orange teeth. You've heard the bells ring at midnight, summoning buckets and prayers. You've smelled burned hair on the wind. Inside the castle, fire is no less of a threat. A single overturned torch can take your chamber, your gowns, your tapestries, your life. So every flame is watched, every cinder feared. You never leave your bed without glancing back to see if the hearth still glows. And then there's theft. Castles are full of people, guards, servants, squires, cooks, visitors. Some are loyal, some are curious, some are hungry in ways that have nothing to do with food. You lock your jewelry away. You hide letters beneath your pillow. You do not sleep deeply. You've heard the stories. A woman in Burgundy smothered with a pillow by her chambermaid. A duchess in Kent who disappeared from her bed and was found in the moat. A princess who died in the night and was later said to have fallen. Fallen from what? No one explains. You bolt your door. You sleep with a dagger near your mattress. You pretend not to know your husband has his own reasons for checking the hallways after dark. Sometimes you wake up sweating, heart racing. Sure, you heard a whisper, a footstep, a voice, but there's nothing, only silence. Or worse, the slow creaking of beams in the ceiling, which sound too much like someone moving just above you. Your dreams don't help. When they come, they are thick and tangled, full of fire, teeth, water, and blood. You dream of faceless children, of bells tolling with no hands to ring them, of doors that open onto black corridors filled with sobbing. You dream of your mother's voice telling you to cover your hair. You dream of the plague cart. And sometimes you don't dream at all. Sometimes you lie awake listening, because medieval nights are not silent. They are full of sound: dogs barking, wolves howling beyond the walls, screams, prayers, a drunk man vomiting somewhere below your window, a woman in labor 2 chambers down, crying out for Saint Margaret. The rush of wind through the chimney that sounds like a baby wailing in the dark. Even when it's quiet, it's not. There's always the weight of something, as if the darkness itself is pressing down, trying to enter through the gaps in the shutters. And then, always, there's the fear of death. It's not a distant idea, not something for old age. Death is here. Now, in your chest when you cough, in the water when it tastes off, in the food when it's too warm for pork, in the blood when it won't stop flowing. You've lost friends in their 20s, children at 5, cousins from fevers, sisters from childbirth, guards from a scratch that turned black by morning. Every night, you wonder, will you wake up? Or will they find your body cold, eyes open, mouth slack in prayer? The priest says to sleep with your soul ready. So you do, or try. You confess. You bless yourself. You say the prayers, the long one. But nothing eases the knot behind your ribs. Nothing truly chases off the shadows. And so you lie in bed, surrounded by walls as thick as city gates, wearing gold-stitched linen, covered in fur, beside a fire that still smokes. And yet, you feel so small, because the truth is, in the Middle Ages, night doesn't care who you are. It creeps in through the cracks. It wraps around your throat. It whispers that you are alone, even when you aren't. And when sleep finally comes, it is shallow, fleeting. You dream of bells, but they're not tolling for prayer. They're tolling for you. And now, the fire has gone quiet. The stone walls are still. The voices have faded. The dogs have stopped barking in the distance. Even the wind, that constant whispering thing, seems to have fallen asleep. You lie there, in a room that is not a chamber, in a bed that is not made of straw, in a world that has forgotten blessedly what it once asked of women like you, because your journey through medieval royalty is ending now. Not with trumpets or fanfare, not with prayers or punishment, but with stillness and with a breath. We've been through a lot tonight, haven't we? We've woken up in the cold, on rough sheets, aching and surrounded by stale smells and silent watchers. We've endured mornings filled with bitter wine and bloodletting, strange potions and silent pain. We've squeezed into laced-up gowns that left no room to breathe. We've smiled through feasts where the food might kill you faster than the gossip. We've whispered prayers with trembling hands, hoping to be heard, hoping, more than anything, just to survive another season. We've carried children, we've lost them, we've laughed with friends, then watched them disappear in a blink. We've danced in candlelight and buried dreams in linen shrouds. And through it all, we endured, because that's what royal women did. They endured silently, elegantly, powerfully. Even when their voices were muffled behind veils and protocol, even when their bodies were tools for alliance, for heirs, for sacrifice, they didn't ask for sainthood. They didn't ask for pity. But still, their lives were nothing like the storybooks we read today. And that's why we tell these stories, not to mock, not to glorify, but to remember, because behind every tapestry was a tired hand that stitched it. Behind every royal decree was a woman who was never asked. Behind every perfect portrait was someone itchy, exhausted, or quietly heartbroken. And tonight, you walked in her shoes. You woke where she woke, ate what she ate, feared what she feared. But here's the comfort, the warm truth to wrap around you now. As you settle in, You don't have to wake up there. You don't have to fear your bathwater. You don't have to pray that the bread isn't moldy. You don't have to smile at a man you didn't choose. You don't have to pretend you're not cold or sick or tired or hurt just to be loved or accepted or safe. You live in a world with clean sheets, warm showers, toothpaste, real pillows, and silence when you want it. You live in a world where your pain can be spoken, where your joy is not suspicious, where your body is your own. And right now, in this moment, you are free from corsets, from watchful priests, from hungry rats, from bloodletting, leeches, or lice, from being defined by your ability to bear son. You are no longer a lady of the court. You are a witness. You've traveled through time, through centuries of sorrow and splendor, and come back with your eyes wide open. And now you can rest. No need to check the shutters. No need to listen for footsteps. No need to fear the night. Because tonight is yours. Peaceful, yet modern, safe. So let yourself sink deep into your mattress, into the soft hum of your space, into the calm that comes from knowing that you are not in that world anymore. You are here now, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by comfort, free from expectation. And as you drift, let the castle fade. Let the cold retreat. Let the gowns and the bells and the judgment melt into the shadows behind your eyelids. You've earned this rest. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well,